Wow, good job, me. Tech issues there. I had my mic on mute, so rookie mistake. I'll go through that spiel again. Welcome back, everyone. It's the 5th or 6th week of our South Bend Gaming Series. We appreciate everyone who's sticking around through the tech issues, and those who are new, we're glad you joined us. Once again, we'd like to remind everyone to check out the website and socials using the panels below to stay up to date on what is going on with our commemorative virtual event. You know, we couldn't come together in person. We adjusted and overcame to provide opportunities to connect and empower local gamers, share some local experiences and information with you, and connect with new friends and maybe even some old friends over some common interests. So tonight we're following up on this idea of play by diving into the esports realm. We've got Dan Wirt from Bethel University and Stephen Robinson Jr. from the Elkhart Elite. Dan Wirt is new with Bethel University as the director of esports, and Stephen Robinson is coach and director, if you will, of the Elkhart High School Elite program. And I'll let them introduce themselves a little bit and talk about the opportunity for esports and gaming here in the community, as well as within the education world, and how those different environments kind of can overlap. So with that said, I would love for Dan to give us a little background about himself and talk about what interested him in getting started with esports. So Dan, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Appreciate you having this and being on here. So my background, and this is great because Steve and I come from different backgrounds in terms of he's a big time gamer and I'm a businessman. And Brian, you're kind of in between, here. So for me, my background is actually in 25 plus years in sales, marketing, product development, product management in a variety of industries. And I've recently kind of come to the esports and gaming arena by way of my son. I've got a very competitive 13-year-old gamer, a Twitch streamer. And so he's kind of, as a dad, and Steve can kind of attest to this, as a dad, we want to get involved in what our kids are doing. And so that's something for me to connect with him. And as I began, looking at that and looking at the industry, and then the businessman in me started looking at opportunities for developing full-on gaming centers and everything. So kind of one thing led to another, and the opportunity with Bethel came up. And at first I was just going to look at maybe kind of helping them find a coach to do that. But the more that I looked into it, and Steve actually encouraged me, to go ahead and apply. And so I did, and voila, here I am.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that speaks, your experience speaks a lot to, the opportunities within esports is that people can come from different backgrounds. And you talked about your son a little bit. By the way, happy Father's Day to both of you. I hope you had a good one with your family. An opportunity, and maybe an unexpected opportunity to connect with, again, our family. Like, who would have thought father and son playing video games together? That's a stereotype we'd love to keep seeing broken. And we do see it broken in the gaming industry for sure. So Steven, let's hear a little bit about your experience and how Elkhart Elite got started.
So I graduated from Siena Heights in 2015, and the year after I graduated is when they actually started having discussions about an esports program. So it missed me by a year. That's okay. So that's where I got the bulk of the esports background, kind of playing the titles themselves on PC. Got back into Elkhart, came back home in the school system, and then realized how important it was, and I don't want to say important, but how integral it was to have kids have that layout and have that environment, because they're going to play games anyway. They're going to play them at home. They're going to play them regardless, whether we want them to or not. So why not give them a safe space to do it with opportunities to progress forward, whether it be collegiate level, semi-pro, whatever the case is, to give them those avenues. So kind of started doing some research. Took me about probably 4 or 5 months to kind of get the info that I wanted to have, to get the plan that I wanted in place. Took it to our AD at Central at the time, kind of brought it to his attention, gave it to the superintendent. They were all for it. And then from there, just kind of started getting rolling, getting funding, getting everything that we needed for the program, doing call-outs for kids and whatnot, and then figuring out what we wanted to do as far as titles. So we ended up starting that April. It'll be 3 years ago in April, next April. We kind of got it rolling from there, and then it's been kind of rolling ever since. We're sitting at about 30 kids now, especially that we're merged. It's a little different now that we're merged between the two high schools, but we had 30 kids this past season, majority from Central because that's where we're located, and we had some coming from Memorial. So it's kind of been a slow process, man, but it's getting better every year, so can't complain too much.
Absolutely. And in the esports industry as a whole, gaming has been around, and competitive gaming in some sense, we've had some local tournaments here and there, but esports as a whole is a pretty new industry. So a lot of people are just figuring it out. It's definitely something you have to dive into, but you have to dive into, knowing a little bit about it, right? And so with that, I'd like to step back a little and ask you each about, what is your favorite esport to watch, and what is your favorite game to play? Steve, why don't you take a lead on that one?
So favorite to watch and the favorite to play, it's the same. League of Legends right now.
Okay.
Just for a simple fact, it's been around a pretty substantial amount of time. They finally are getting new titles out, which is fantastic. I think they did it at the perfect time. But the overall layout and the atmosphere of the title itself, Riot has done an amazing job creating a format and a platform for their players. From the teams, LCS, all those other teams that they have around here, just in North America alone, how they have those teams set up, how they kind of allow for academy teams to be put into play. They have done an amazing job, and they allow college players to kind of get into those academy teams as well, which Coach we're going to be able to talk about a little bit with his teams and how he kind of progresses them along the way. But league by far.
Awesome. How about you, Coach Wirt? What are your favorites?
Yeah, so I'm kind of coming in from a different angle. What I'm trying to do is really looking at the titles that we're going to be playing. So I'm kind of taking an approach on more of the newbie side. So I'm watching Overwatch, I'm watching some League, I'm watching some Rocket League, Smash, just to get a general idea from an understanding standpoint. Obviously, my son plays a lot of FPS games. He's playing Fortnite. He's playing, Rainbow. He's playing Valorant. So I'll watch him play a little bit. So I'm just kind of getting into beginning to play and beginning to learn a little bit more of that. I was kind of laughing as I was putting this together because, when I was growing up, when I was a teenager, we didn't have anything like this. We had to go down to the local arcade and play, Asteroids and Track and Field and Pac-Man and everything like that. The handheld games I had, were the little Mattel Pro Football and a race car that had a little red dot. I mean, kids today have it easy. I mean, try controlling a little red dot,
right?
And they're all red dots. So. So yeah, that's kind of what mine, but definitely how much it's changed has been amazing.
Yeah, and I think that touches on the fact that games have definitely been around for a long time, and we're figuring out new ways, and I personally think it's really, really awesome, and obviously you guys think there's value in that too. You're bringing it to the education realm, a very central component of our society. So let's talk about why you think it's appropriate for gaming. I know, Steve, you touched on it a little bit, but Dan, we'll go back to you here. What makes you motivated to bring it to the college level, and what are some ways that it kind of overlaps with the education realm?
So it kind of got started before I came on board, and really one of the main reasons why Bethel started was just the whole idea of really wanting to engage the students on campus. Kind of the mission is to really have these students be committed leaders in the church, in the world, in their community. And one of the ways that they do that is to kind of meet them where they're at. And knowing that, gaming was becoming more popular in the culture. There's kids on campus gaming. And as a way to try to reach that segment of the student population with some a little bit more formalized and an opportunity for them to get involved, that's kind of how it got started on the Bethel side. And that's been kind of my thought as I'm looking at it, and my vision is really three-tiered. Obviously our varsity team program for one, then a club program for general students on campus and hosting, tournaments and things like that. And then the education side, whatever that may end up, whether that's just a class here and there, whether that's just working with some of the faculty in the different departments and doing some guest lecturing in a class on esports or marketing, who knows? But I know that the most successful college programs typically incorporate all three of those, varsity, club, and education.
Awesome. And then how have you seen it kind of impacting the student athletes you've been working with, Steve?
So for the most part, in my experience with the players that we have each and every year, it's been a positive correlation because we have a lot of kids, as we mentioned. I mean, it'll always be the topic. They're going to play it regardless. They're always going to play games. So with this standpoint from the high school level and the collegiate level, because they're considered student athletes at the collegiate level as well. Mm-hmm. This is something that kind of propels them to want to continue to succeed academically. So especially for my program, we have pretty strict academic standards that they have to meet. The IHSAA in Indiana says you can have 2 Fs, or you can still compete as long as you have less than 2 Fs. For our guys and girls, if you have anything less than a C-, you're suspended until you get it up. So things like that, which are important because those things help fuel you from the perspective of the parent. Which at the end of the day, those individuals that have say-so and that community to that regard as parents, they're able to help move a program a lot further along than you can individually by yourself. So getting them on board, allowing the kids to kind of thrive in their element of the gaming world is important because like Coach Word said, you kind of want to get them where they're at. So you get them in that world of gaming and you kind of bring them into your world as far as how it should be run leadership-wise and how you should run it in the positive manner that we kind of want to exude out of them when they compete and participate, it makes it a pretty nice two-headed dragon, man. It's kind of hard to stop it at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that, you know, kind of is tugging at my mind right now is the relationships. I feel that because when you're playing League of Legends or Overwatch or Rocket League, right? You know, you have to work with your teammates, and so what can you two talk to about what you have seen, you know, people either on your team or people that you've been watching? What would you say about, you know, the relationships that these people have to build?
I mean, I guess I'll start only because I have had some teams already. Coach Word, he'll be able to delve in a lot more once he gets started. But for me, especially in year one, when we got started with the program, we didn't have a bunch of traditional athletes, quote unquote. We had out of the 20 that I had year one, we had 2 that were like traditional athletes. One played soccer, another one played basketball and did cross country. Those were it. So those 2 knew each other, but the other 18 had no idea who was in the room with them that entire time. So it was interesting to kind of see how it progressed. So big thing that you have to worry about as you get older as an adult, you don't necessarily worry about how you started. You worry about how it progresses and how it finishes up. So that first year, those first couple months, there was communication, like in the sense of the game itself and how to approach it and how to approach the match and what to do, when to do it. But aside from that, there wasn't anything extra outside of it, you know. So you didn't see teammates doing what we're doing right now, which is having conversations on Discord or Zoom or anything like that. But as the year went on and as months went on, we created a team server for Discord. Now we're sitting at year 3. I get notifications at 4:00 in the morning in our Discord server because we got players talking to each other about games or updates or anything like that. And we actually have a team movie night this coming Saturday that we're going to run on our Discord. Everybody's going to be at home. I'm going to stream the movie, and everybody's going to be on their Discord, and we're just kind of going to hang out like that. And that's something that you don't see that. Like being a football coach, we have different ways that we kind of communicate with our players and that we interact with them on a personal level. This is way different because you have to approach it a different way because those kids that we have in esports aren't the same kids that I see on the football field, you know. So being able to kind of mold them differently and kind of get them to conform to what we're trying to do for our program is super important. So I think the relationships piece is probably the biggest piece. It's even bigger than the game itself. Because at the end of the day, if they are able to succeed being better together, I think it's a lot easier for them to compete.
Absolutely. Have you noticed anything maybe from like an outsider's perspective? Like, have you noticed any trends, Coach Dan, or anything from your son playing games? Or
well, actually, I would like to kind of comment on the relationship side because, that's sort of new, kind of coming in here, and some of the players that I've recruited or that are that I've given scholarships to, some of them know each other. A couple of the players are roommates. Others don't know each other. You know, they've come. We've got everything from freshmen through seniors. You know, they're beginning. We set up a Discord server for our team as well, and they're beginning to kind of get to know one another, play a little bit, you know, talk and communicate. But what's one of the neat things, you know, and Steve can attest to this on the relationship side, is it's one thing when they're just playing at home by themselves, even though they're talking to their friends online. It's a whole nother dynamic when they're sitting in a room and doing that. And to a person, every person I talked to was really super excited about having that opportunity to play with another person, be in a room, get to know people, because they're playing with a bunch of strangers oftentimes. And the opportunity from a team-based standpoint is really exciting. And I'm excited to, you know, we're going to have team building events and things like that. And I'm excited to see sort of how our players develop. Because again, you know, we've only have one kid really that's a traditional athlete. He also is a soccer player. Everyone else, you know, they're everything from a psych major to engineering, mathematics, criminal justice, cybersecurity. They're all over the map.
Yeah.
So,
question: is that soccer player your Rocket League player by chance, or?
Well, of course.
That's great. That's
of course.
Great. Yeah, I've heard being in the Rock League community, it's either soccer or hockey, right? Well, and there's some people that don't like either, to be honest, but mostly soccer or hockey. Like that's what brought a lot of people in. So, no, it's definitely interesting to see that overlap. And I know I personally can attest to, like, when you're playing competitively with a team over the internet, you don't stop to think about the in-person aspect of it. But when you meet those people in person, then it becomes a whole new level of connection and chemistry, because you get to put that face to the voice, and you get to like really truly know that person. Like they become more than just the teammate that scores goals. They become a full person because you get to really know them, right? Like you ask them more about what their major is or what this is, and you get to see them and see that interaction or their expressions when they're playing. So definitely I can appreciate the relationship side of that and what you guys are speaking to. So with that said, I'd love to hear more about like some of the goals of your guys' program. So I'll let Dan take this one away. As a new program, kind of how did you set the vision, and kind of what is your vision for the program coming into it this year?
Yeah, so I spoke a little bit about sort of that 3-tier vision, but really the first year, my goal was simply to develop and build a foundation, and just kind of building that successful foundation. I know Steve had probably similar goals when he first got it started, because the whole point is you don't want to take on too much. I would rather do 1 or 2 things really, really well than try to do a bunch and fall on my face. This is a brand new program with the school. It's under the athletics department. We're the 29th sport at the school. So from that standpoint, what's nice is I can look to some of the other programs that have been developed and kind of see what people have done, and then also the standards that the school has set. So for us, really the main goal is laying that foundation, building that framework, having a successful program, getting the kids involved and engaged, and then making it. I'm not so concerned wins and losses the very first year. I'm more concerned about these students working together, developing those relationships, learning, improving as a game player over the course of the year, and then build from there.
Absolutely. And Steve, how did you kind of set the foundation for your program? What kind of things were you looking for?
So I'm a little different in that regard, to where if I fall on my face, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with doing that. So for me, I didn't have any, it sounds really bad when I say it, but I didn't really have any help when we started the program, because it was so new at the time when we first started. There's nobody, it's different now because we have like guys like us that are here and other people in our area that kind of know a little bit, if not a lot, about esports. But when I got started, there was no help. It was me finding out as much as I could and leaning on what I already knew to get the program started, using connections that I have and trying to find new ones, like forcing my way in the doors that were locked and bolted down, basically, to kind of get rolling as best we could. So from that standpoint, man, the basis, like the foundation for me for the first year and to be for every year, is I want to make sure that every kid that comes to Arcadia, when they start and when they graduate, they leave better than when they got there. They have a better experience when they leave. They can literally walk to a kid that's a freshman in the building and say, "Hey, if you don't know Coach Robinson, go see him. He's down the hall. Best guy you'll meet, best program you'll ever have in Elkhart," like point blank. And that's a big kind of capsule to have everything in. But I think if you do it to where the main focus is always making sure that environment and that relationship that kid has with the program attached to it is the best it can be every day, you'll always end up on top. Now, granted, the first piece for me is always giving them a great experience that they can build on. The second piece is making sure I get as many kids, as many student athletes as I possibly can out of Elkhart. And that doesn't mean they don't come back. I would love them to come back, but by getting them out, I mean getting them to college to play. So my biggest goal for me when I started the program, I want to get 2 kids scholarships every year. We've done that every year so far. So, and I think I'm about 99% sure this year 3 will get 2 for sure. Also, but that's the goal, because if we can get 2 out of here, kind of use what they already do as technically a hobby and to perform at the level to where they can do it at college and get paid and get school paid for, or at least portion of it, to do that for another 4 years. I don't know any parent that would be upset with that. I don't know any kid that would turn that down. That already does it anyway. Mm-hmm. So those kind of go hand in hand, and I think that's super important.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have an example? You mentioned, you're not afraid to, fall while you're trying to do something, right? And so do you have an example of a kind of a learning experience that you think people should either consider, or something that you have to try to learn from?
Yeah. So year one, like I mentioned, we didn't have any funding. So we got the go ahead in March to start the program. With $0 basically. So I probably hit every contact that I had growing up, as an adult and a young adult and everything, to try to get as much leeway as I could, or much as understanding as I could financially. So we reached out to Thor, to Mr. Thomas, who runs some of the bigger RV factories and companies around us. All these other individuals, Mr. Thomas from Thor, Mr. Thomas from, like I said, the RV companies, people downtown, people in South Bend, people in Goshen, like all these companies, to let them know. And it was, the pitch was more or less, hey, you would be the first. You would literally be the first. Like Goshen didn't have a program, Penn didn't have a program, Northridge didn't have a program. This would be the first. And a lot of them flat out just said no, because nobody knows what it is. So you're banking on a 25-year-old man saying, hey, this is what's next. You need to hop on it. But they don't know it. They don't, they haven't heard anything about it. They don't know what it's going to be. So I think the biggest things for me falling on my face is more or less just having to put the program out there when we don't know if it succeeds. But at the end of the day, if we don't get that funding at the beginning, there is no program.
Right.
And that's not to say that the school system didn't help. They did as much as they could, but they just didn't know. Mm-hmm. So it was more of a show me thing, then we can help, but you got to show me first. And that's not every program, but that just happened to be what ours was about.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's funny, Steve, when you say that, you're a 25-year-old man pitching to probably old guys like me, businessman. Well, it's funny you should say that, though, because a couple years ago, my son, he's almost 14 now, but he really started playing Fortnite on PS4 probably a couple years ago when it first came out, and he's playing all the time. And as a dad, I'm thinking, oh, come on, why is he playing so much? Well, then my wife reads an article in Forbes magazine that says colleges are starting to give scholarships for esports. And I was like, wait, what? Yeah. And of course, then the dad in me, who has to pay for kids' college education, says, hey, go back in your room and keep playing. And I could speak to that scholarship section here, because let me just tell you, as I've been on Zoom calls with these players, and when I've given them the offer, I've always had the parents on as well. And we kind of go through, because I've already been meeting with the kids beforehand, but then I'll go through and I'll tell them, hey, I want you to come and be on the team, and we're going to give you a scholarship to play video games. And then I look at the mom and dad and I say, did you ever think that, all those times your kid playing video games is going to pay off? And they just shake their head and start laughing. But the whole scholarship side of it is brand new. And yes, we offer them, other schools are offering them. And I love what Steve's doing and what some of the other high schools are doing to prepare these kids. And I love the fact that he says, hey, if you get anything less than a C-, you can't play. You've got to get your grades up. Because, what I always tell our players and what I would tell a group of high school students is, gaming is down. For us as a Christian university, I tell my players, hey, your relationship with Christ is first, your academics are second, your gaming is third. And so making sure they have those priorities correct is very, very important.
Absolutely. And that definitely turns to another interesting part where, how do you think recruiting and development, how does that look for each of you?
So I'll start really on that one. For us, being a relatively new program and kind of jumping on it a little bit late, uh, most of the kids that I have right now, well, I've got 12 signed, and 10 of those 12 are, well, I would say 9 of those 12 are kids that were already at Bethel. One of them was a transfer, and 2 are incoming freshmen. And so that's kind of you take what you have, and there were a lot of, I mean, there's some really good players that are involved in there. So for me, it was a little bit of recruitment. Not that I didn't try, but a lot of kids had already committed at that late juncture. So a lot of my recruitment efforts going forward for incoming freshmen and things like that will be for fall 2021. Although I'm still hoping to add a few more here for this year.
Absolutely.
So from my point of view, the recruiting or retention of players, it kind of goes all year round. So if it's the first day of school, I'm hitting classrooms, I'm hitting the media center, the student center during lunch periods. If it's December 15th before the end of the semester, I'm doing the same thing. So and we can't be picky necessarily at the high school level. We just want to get kids. So I have the advantage of just being able to grab any and every kid possible. And not necessarily, like Coach Word said, not necessarily have to worry about the wins and losses right away, because I'm not going to get fired. I'm not going anywhere, so to speak. But what I can do and make sure that I get accomplished on my end for the recruitment is to make sure that they're a better player once they're done than when they started. So we have a ton of kids that have never played on PC or that have never played a specific game. Our League of Legends team, we have 2 new players that literally have never played League of Legends before they started playing this school year. They had no idea what the game was, like none whatsoever. But that's the exciting part for me, because you'll see a lot of kids, and Coach Word, that's usually all he'll see. For the most part, he'll only see kids that know exactly what the game is, or exactly how to play it, or have some sense of understanding with what the title entails. My kids will have kids that have no idea what the game is. Like, they'll think it has to be on controller instead of keyboard, which makes it fun, because then you're teaching the entire process over and over again. So it's like you're learning the game over, because you have to make sure you're intricately teaching them certain aspects of it. So like for me, I have no recruiting cap. I have no requirement type of thing. I just want to get as many kids as possible. If they stick with it, fantastic. If they don't, we find the next thing for them. That might not be the game aspect of it. It might be the broadcasting aspect of it, or the statistics. There are so many avenues, and that's one thing about esports that is amazing, man. And Coach Work can be able to talk about a lot more, because he's doing a lot of that curriculum work now at Bethel, kind of behind the scenes. But there's so much. There are so many kids walking through hallways and walking on university campuses that don't play games. They don't play these titles, but they probably understand the games more than some of us do.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Which is awesome to see it, because those will be the people that will run our LCS commentary booths, or be able to run the Overwatch League commentary, or have snippet videos and YouTube critiques and all that stuff, which is almost as important, if not more important, than the actual gameplay itself. Because a lot of us, when we watch people on stream and watch tournaments and stuff, if we're not getting commentary or getting that feedback, we're not going to watch it, or it's not going to be as exciting. Right. So I know that was a segue into something else, but
no worries. Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of opportunities. There's just so much to dive into when it comes to gaming, and with that said, it's interesting to think about the balance, because one thing I don't think we've dived into too much is we talked about it a little bit, right? Like you guys both pointed out, Coach Robinson said, if grades, you obviously have to balance your grades. But that's from a student perspective. What about from your two's perspective? Because obviously, for Steve, being a gamer himself and doing some streams and stuff like that, you have to balance your work, your own passions, and and your families. You know, you guys have families, and we have to balance these things out. So how do you guys kind of approach that sense of balance, and how do you think gaming can help with that sense of balance?
We're both kind of chuckling because we're passionate about it, you know, and I can attest to waking up at 3:00 in the morning and going on the computer because I can't sleep or whatever. And I log on to our Discord and I see Steve Robinson playing League of Legends at 3:00 in the morning. So he knows. But the balance side for me, you know, I mean, I would say Steve's somewhat fortunate in that, you know, he's already working at the school, but he's a teacher at a different school, and he's doing this with the esports program, and he's also, you know, football coach and a dad of, you know, young kids. You know, I've got a full-time job. This is my part-time, you know, job. Still have a family. Still trying to, you know, maintain everything else that I'm doing and learning. So it can be somewhat challenging with the balance standpoint, especially when you're trying to get up to speed and trying to, you know, learn some of the different things. The biggest thing is you just have to listen to your body and listen and basically recognize when you're getting a little overloaded. And sometimes you got to just, hey, take a step back, turn the computer off, rest and refresh a little bit, and then get back at it the next day.
Absolutely.
I mean, you pretty much said it all. I think.
Sorry.
No, that's fantastic. That makes it super easy. I don't have to say a lot, if anything. I think from the perspective for me, like Coach said, I got a lot of stuff going on, but he does as well. But his list is a lot longer than mine because he has to worry about the program at a university level. I have to worry about a program at a high school level that goes year round, but we're not so much in the business of having to maintain that excellence right away. So there might be a year we'll have like a down year or a down semester or anything like that. But just making sure that they make sure they have the academic wherewithal, like we mentioned a couple times. Being able to keep them academically in check helps the overall thing. It makes it a lot easier on me, so I don't have to stress out. Because if they're doing what they need to do academically, everything else will take care of itself, which makes my job a lot easier. Because that's one of the biggest things that I had a problem with in year one was having to go to classrooms like every day, every other day, and get grade reports and see who's on the bubble, who's off the bubble, rearranging teams for matches that we have or scrims that I set up a week in advance. And then I find out that the kid's not eligible to play. And then that makes it, their responsibility factor is super important. And I think that's another thing that esports does well, because like you said, every title pretty much is a team-based title. Except for Fortnite, you can play solos. But I mean, in Rocket League, I guess you can play solos, but they don't have those titles per se at the collegiate level to worry about. So if you're screwing around, you're letting the team down in a sense, and that means they don't compete. So then you're not only hurting yourself, you're hurting a program. So to give it an example, if Coach Wirt has an Overwatch team who is full of studs right now, but we have one that can't compete, no knock against the sub that has to come in, but that sub isn't as good or isn't as equipped as that starter that he has to sit. So that hurts the entire complexity of that program, at least for that match. So it's just a lot. And that's why I said he has a lot more to worry about than I do. I mean, but I'm pumped to see him work at it and see what he does. So I have him toot his horn a little bit.
Absolutely.
Way to put more pressure on me, man.
No pressure, man. None whatsoever.
No, Steve knows. Steve has been awesome as we've been kind of developing this, and you know, I've talked with him quite a bit over the last few months, and just kind of picking his brain, and because as a person who's already been there, and it's funny, he's so knowledgeable at this. Just like even with my kid, you know, my kid is so knowledgeable at. I had him showing me Streamlabs tonight, and he's just clicking, saying, "Oh, I have this, and this is this, and this is this, and that is that." I'm like, dude, you need to slow down a little bit. But like Steve said, the from my perspective, that's a little bit different from Steve's, is some of his kids coming in, they don't know anything. They've never played a particular game before. Whereas my kids, yeah, they're the experts at the game. I'm not going to teach them how to play the game. My role simply, and this is kind of one of my goals, my role is simply to kind of give them the structure, help them think about strategy. I've already told a lot of them, I'm going to put a lot of onus of responsibility on the players themselves, because part of it is a future strategy is, like Steve said, he's trying to develop these kids and develop their character. And as they grow up, I'm trying to develop leadership skills, skills that they can use in the outside world once they graduate, and being resourceful, being able to work with different people and different personalities, things like that. So that's one of the reasons why that I'm doing that with those kids, and get them to think a little bit more rather than just playing the game themselves. I'm getting them I want to get them to think and talk amongst each other. Okay, well, what's the best comp? What do you play? Why did you play this character? And get them thinking more strategically. And I think that's sort of the role at the collegiate level right now. That might be different than at the high school level.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I love these conversations. There's so much to think about, and it's great that both of you are thinking about all these different things, and it's great to see this come to our community as well. What I just saw in chat, Arissa stick spam for Overwatch. What do you guys think is the most exciting about having these kind of things in the local community, from the convention that we're hoping to have eventually, and to having esports? What do you think are some of the positives that can come from these opportunities?
Well, in my thought and opinion, and me and Dan have had discussions about it prior to this, the biggest thing I think that you'll see is, and we've talked about it already, economically, it's going to help a lot. It's going to help a lot, even if you just look from the standpoint of the Bendix Center. People have their reservations. I'm one of them. I think there are ways, I don't know how they'll run it, basically. I don't know what the layout is like long term, but I think it has an upside to be really beneficial for the community and for the region that we have going on. Because at the end of the day, when you have like semi-pro teams in South Bend that are kind of popping up, you have these schools that are having teams, that's going to be a big venue, man. You won't have to move. You won't have to travel to Chicago or any of these other places in like Missouri where they have these huge arenas to kind of set the stage for those things. You can go to South Bend, and it's going to be just as good. So I think for that, economically, it's going to be a big boom, which is why I think people are getting involved. And you see all these investors that are investing millions of dollars to kind of get into space now, because it's trending so far up. And I know, I got into a little side note. I had got into the stock market a week ago, and my wife she's not happy about it, right? I get it for good reason, because the market is bad right now. But I will tell you for a fact, the one thing that is not changed at all, which has actually gotten better, is all of the esports. All esports avenues have gotten better. So like Tencent, who owns Riot Games, Activision, all of these companies like Treyarch, Take-Two, CD Projekt Red, all of these companies are trending up because all of these people are still playing games. So that's one thing that will never go away. So I think our area kind of getting involved in that aspect of it is going to be a huge upside. And the fact that we have an actual collegiate program right next door to it makes it even better, because then you have kids coming here. So instead of having to go to Robert Morris or Trine, which is an hour one way and 2 hours another way, they'll just come in our backyard, which in turn puts money in Bethel's pocket, which helps the Bendix Center, which helps, it just is a trickle down effect. So it's going to be a big deal, man. I'm super excited to see it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and to kind of add to that, again, it kind of goes back from my thought and my vision, and yeah, Steve and I have talked a lot about this. Both of us see, my thought is within 5 years, or probably less, every high school in America that wants an esport program or club is going to have something. You're going to have most of the colleges and universities that want to have a program have a program. And so one of the things that I looked at and I'm working on is taking that whole, the whole ecosystem, if you will, and looking at it from the traditional sports market to the esports market, and my kids played, travel ball and baseball and little league and things like that kind of growing up. So taking that same philosophy for, kids that might not be traditional athletes and developing youth leagues, whether that's online, whether that's some online, some in person, because, Steve's going to want kids as they're coming up to know some of these games so that he doesn't have to spend as much time teaching and he can do a little bit more in development. These other high schools are starting, programs. We've got this pro team, semi-pro team, the South Bend Lions coming in. So I think that Northern Indiana could really be a hotbed for gaming, and all of us are involved. The three of us right now are involved in different aspects in helping to make that a reality. So that's what's really exciting.
Absolutely. What I loved what you said there is when you talked about, Steve, the knowledge base growing so that Steve can take one thing off of his plate. And when Steve and when you are able to take one more thing off of your plate, like when you don't have to teach them the mechanics of the game or the characters of the game, you have one more opportunity to do something else. Like you've taken that responsibility off of your plate. And I think that's one thing that's really cool, especially about, we have Steve starting this high school, giving a model to high schools in the area of what a successful high school program could look like, one opportunity for it to look like, and Bethel diving in and saying, hey, this is what collegiate esports, we're going to find out what collegiate esports looks like for us. And so to encourage, some of the other teams, maybe we'll eventually see IUSB jump on board, or Notre Dame, or other places, maybe even Southwest Michigan, to have different levels of different programs. Because I mean Bethel obviously is NAIA, and I'm not sure what that would look like for the esports realm, but there's all sorts of these different levels, and when we have these different opportunities, it creates, having each of the opportunities creates more opportunities for other people and more room for people to jump in. And we already know, as you said, you recruited 9 out of your 12 were people on campus, and Steve is going to classrooms and getting people in the classrooms to come join him. So we know that, like Steve said, we know that kids are gaming. We know that adults are gaming. So to have these conversations and have these programs, structured programs, definitely give us a lot of really cool opportunities. With that said, there's definitely a lot more we could dive into tonight. I want to give you guys a last chance to say anything about your programs, upcoming news, exciting announcements for us, and then also chat an opportunity to ask any questions they might have. So, Dan, why don't you start? If you have, either of you two, go ahead and chime in. What are you excited about for your programs? What else do you want people to know about your program?
Well, it's been exciting for me. It's been a kind of a whirlwind 2 months. I am still adding a couple more players. I mean, we've got 7 Overwatch players, so I may add one more, but we're pretty good there. I've got 3 Rocket League players already signed. Probably add one more there. I've got 2 Smash players. Probably add a couple more there. We're also going to be doing a youth camp. So if there's any, parents that are watching or kids or anything like that from the 11 to 18-year-olds, we're going to be doing a youth camp in July. We were going to have it at Bendix. We've changed the venue to Bethel University, July 20th through the 23rd. So if there are any kids out there that are interested in kind of learning a little bit more about esports and kind of what it takes to compete at the college level and kind of learn a little bit more about that, by all means, kind of sign up. And I'm just excited to see where we're going. The next step after recruiting is beginning to look at scheduling and we're joining a couple of conferences and things like that. So every day is something new.
Absolutely.
I'm actually going to spend my last couple of seconds talking about Bethel. So, because it sounds bad. It sounds bad, but Elkhart doing pretty good right now. So, so no, me being where I'm at, in the position that the program is in, we benefit greatly by having Dan and Bethel in play. Because then it makes it a lot easier to create a pipeline because that pipeline is just up the road, So then it does exactly what we needed to do, which is bring the talent that we have here and just siphon it back into what we already have going on. Not to mention how you guys you mentioned the semi-pro team in South Bend. That's a perfect quote unquote academy team right there. You know what I'm saying? That helps. So you have Bethel who starts to bring in these stud student athletes from places like Carmel that has an amazing esports program, and Rossville, who runs the state in Hearthstone games, basically. And you have all these programs that have players that have to travel for hours to go to programs, to go to like Tiffin and all these other universities that have esports programs. Mom and dad, they don't like it because they can't go see them. They can't go visit them. As opposed to going to Mishawaka up the road, an hour away, hour and a half away. They're going to Coach Word, man. They're getting, you know what I'm saying? They're getting, and I think I'm bragging on them. I think this is a good fit for a lot of players from the standpoint of, especially if they are not so much into the gaming aspect of it, but they're looking at like the communications aspect or the broadcasting standpoint. Coach Wirt has, as he mentioned, he has an extensive background in business. So he knows the ups and downs of that kind of dynamic that a lot of players are trying to get involved in. Because at the end of the day, with every other professional sport, the margin of players who make it from college to the pros is very small, man. A lot of those players that are really good in college, no matter what the sport is, you see a lot of those players later on wearing a suit and tie, doing the broadcasting, or doing the stats, or analyzing stuff. So that's big, man. And that's the business side of it, which I think is that you won't get that in a lot of places. You won't be able to go to a lot of schools that have esports programs and be able to say, hey, my director, my head coach is also a very good businessman. So we can't rely on that in a lot of places. You have to spend that money elsewhere. So I think Bethel's on the right track. I'm excited for the first year to kind of see how they play and how it plays out against teams like Siena Heights, who has a great team. Trying all these places around us that have esports programs that are a little more that are established. I'm excited to see how Bethel does in year one.
Absolutely. Definitely love what you said about, again, tying back to those opportunities, when people can see the path, esports scholarships being a real opportunity, they see, oh, Elkhart's got a program, why don't we start participating in esports? And then they see, oh, by the way, Bethel also has a program. It's a lot more realistic, and as these programs expand and get bigger, it means there's more opportunities for more people to participate when we've already got a pretty large pool participating. Right. You guys have definitely done a great job covering things. We got one audience question. I wanted to follow up on this question, but I'll let you guys definitely answer it first as well. And so what Sable Dragon Rook, one of our mods, fantastic mod, asked, what can regular people do to help the presence of esports grow and become a thing? Maybe people who don't play or know much about the common games.
So I'm reading it as you're reading it. Real quick, Fortnite is dying. Just throwing that out there. Fortnite is going to die here soon with Valorant and all these other games that they're popping out with. There will still be a fan base for it, but
that's fired.
It's a legitimate shot though.
It was fired. It was fired the other morning at 6 a.m. when my son woke up and downloaded Chapter 3, and then when I woke up and he said he hated it, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on.
It had its run. But to go back to that question, I think, oh snap, getting real. I think the biggest aspect to kind of getting like individuals who are not in the esports scene involved is just kind of letting them see the benefits. Going back to, like I said, when we started our program, none of our administration knew what it was. They knew what video games were. Like our principal, he said the last video game he played was Pong. Can't tell you the last time I played Pong, but like he understood what a video game was, but he didn't understand the benefits of playing a video game. And I think understanding that, yes, there will be research out that says video games are violent and they attach you to like having these mental behaviors, and they're also discoveries and sciences that say they don't. I think just doing your research and just understanding that it is out there, like video games are violence to a degree, but you have to weigh the positives that come with them, which is an education, which is social interaction, all these things that a lot of kids that are introverts, this is what they get out of it. Like you read all these stories on Twitter about people that played Halo on Xbox way back in the day, and they ended up meeting up with their like player friend like 8 years later that was their best friend online, and their best friends in real life. They had this connection that they kind of bonded together. Like that stuff you don't get that in other areas. You don't get that in other avenues. This is something that's super important. And I think taking the time to just understand it, and even if you don't understand, just sit down and watch it. Like Coach Word is doing a great job. He says he doesn't really know a lot about the games. He just sits and watches them. Like doing that is more than enough, because then once you watch it and get a little bit of understanding for it, then you can start asking questions about it. And when you start asking questions, then you have a legitimate conversation with people. And I think that's what is important, just having conversations about it.
So I would also say, for the people that really may not understand, but they want to understand, first thing is, if you're a parent of a gamer, don't just let your kid close the door in his bedroom or her bedroom and play all the time without finding out what they're doing. And they're gonna be, they're gonna probably say, why are you interested, and everything like that. But if you approach it in the manner of, hey, I just want to learn what you're doing. I just want to connect. I want to watch you. I think my son, was probably a little, taken aback when his, dad started a Twitch account just so I can watch him, and I get notifications when he's on, and I'm at a trade show and I'm bored and I'm watching my son play Fortnite. So there's a benefit there to you parents. But the other thing that I'm kind of working on as well, and I know, Brian, you are, and we're all kind of reaching different segments of, the population. But for me, one of the things that I want to try to do, add that 18th thing to my plate, is to do like a podcast, and really look at kind of speaking, and it might speak to traditional gamers, but it's also kind of speaking to, parents, speaking to business community people, just to help them, educate them, and help them to understand, the whole esports phenomenon and gaming phenomenon. It's here to stay. It's growing. There's a lot of benefits on the school side. I'm as a university program, I'm going to be connecting with a lot of high schools in the area and trying to help them get programs started, just because there's so many benefits and studies that have done, just that can help any of the people that, just like on a regular traditional team, they're going to class. Their grades typically tend to be better. They're better behaved. So there's a lot of benefits that I see, and that Steve can definitely attest to from his students, that are exciting to see what's going to happen.
Absolutely. Great stuff, gentlemen. I appreciate your time being here tonight. Real quick, another way you can definitely support esports, especially in this local area, is by if you two want to type out in the chat your channels, you can go follow them, because Bethel University has a channel, and they'll be looking to stream their games. Elkhart Elite, the EH Elite, with Stephen Robinson. They play games. I watched a couple of times when they streamed, their various tournaments and participation. That's definitely another way to support it. And also, personally, I think that, a little biased here, but I think attending a local convention can help. But with the Bendix Arena as well, if you take your gaming experience and add something new to it, like going to any convention, not just Power Up South Bend when it happens, but go to C2E2, go to PAXCon, meet up with these people you're interacting online with, have conversations with people, what does it mean to play esports? Just like we're doing here tonight, what are our goals? What do we enjoy? Just simple stuff like that really helps support the industry, because then we're engaging with it further. Another thing, I'm going to put this in the chat here, if I can type correctly. Another way to directly support the local convention and these orgs, the goal of the convention is to give a platform to these orgs, but Apparently Nightbot doesn't want to do my command, but you can go to our website where there's a link for our newest Stay Home Game On package. Again, with the adaptations we had to make to this current situation, we've got some new packages. Way to go, Nightbot, right? First it banned somebody in the chat, and then now it's not working on the links. But yeah, we've got a new package. We've got some free options, just for you to connect with gamers. We've got a couple of, if you want to really dive in and support financially the convention aspect, we've got a package with a jersey, enamel pin, and some stickers, as well as some other perks, and another package with just the enamel pin and the stickers for those on a budget. But ways to, just, again, show off your support. You see someone with a badge, the enamel pin, be like, hey, I know Power Up Convention. That gives you a starting point, that breaks the ice to have some of these conversations. I'm a gamer. Have some pride and have a little bit of pride in your identity, and enough to balance it out. With, hey, I'm a gamer, but I'm also a student. I'm also an athlete. I'm also a businessman. I'm also a family woman. Businesswoman, family man. So many diverse opportunities within the gaming community to be a gamer, to be a broadcaster, to be engaged. So just keep up having these conversations. Thanks again, everyone, for your time. And we'll see you next week.